to the media, if you pay attention to political ads, you might think that the Supreme Court only adjudicates religious issues, maybe some civil liberties, so-called social issues, which are important issues. But you wouldn't necessarily know that the Supreme Court, most of the time, day-to-day wise, is dealing with essentially business issues, economic issues, issues about the relationship between corporations and their employees. And on those issues, Amy Barrett's record is extremely clear. She consistently sides with corporations. There was one study that said that 55 of the cases that came before her court that dealt with the relationship between corporations and workers, in 76% of those cases, she sided with the corporate side. Weeks before she was nominated to the court, literally weeks, she issued a ruling that made it much harder for gig economy workers to essentially get overtime, or at least sue in court for back pay and overtime pay. And that was a decision essentially strengthening these arbitration agreements and saying you can't even come into court to have them litigated. And I think that what's gone on here is that when you look at all the dark money coming into the campaign to support her, that dark money is, tens of millions of dollars. That's not money that's coming in because she's a conservative on abortion. It's not coming into this campaign because she's for religious issues and the like. That's money that wants to make money.
Right. This is, again, an issue of class. You may have these identity issues that are thrown in. And again, it's not important to protect Roe v. Wade. No, it's more so that there's an economic incentive and motive in order to get her in that spot. And that while identity issues matter, these other issues of economics also matter. And the money behind her is not there for no reason. It's there to ensure that court remains a corporate court. And at this point, there's going to be, a 6-3 majority in regards to that point of view on that court. This is not a balanced court. This court has been shifted significantly to the right. And I want all of those Democrats to think back to when Obama was so casual about Merrick Garland, as opposed to doing everything in his power to take Herculean effort to get Merrick Garland in that spot. In this very specific instance, they're going to take it. This is David Sirota. David Sirota was Bernie Sanders' senior advisor and speechwriter, or at the very least one of them. And he advocated for more aggressive policy towards Joe Biden, but just like Nina Turner was basically shut down by Sanders. Sanders had no issue attacking people who were backing him. Sirota, Turner, or Teachout, all of them at some degree were either silenced, shut down, or outwardly attacked by one Sanders, who they dedicated their working life and lifeblood to, their very breath existence to, trying to get into office. Sirota has been very aggressive in pushing Democrats and attacking and going after them, so much so that people were attacking him because he was putting out information. Now, the fact of the matter is Sirota never put out anything that was a lie. He was always honest, straightforward, and when he made his political point and made his points of view. And being a writer, what he does now is writes. He has a blog, and that blog has been getting a huge amount of attention because of how good he is, one, but that he is a strident lefty, and he has been trying to hold political leaders accountable, particularly people from the standpoint of a party that he's in. Somebody made the point, first we win, then we pivot. As if you're going to win, then Democrats are going to say, okay, here's this. It's farcical. It's utterly ridiculous. If that was the case, that would have already happened. No, what happens is you win, and then they do whatever they want to do for their constituents that don't include the overwhelming majority of the public. Like Biden said, nothing is going to much change. Nothing is going to much change. I'll take him at his word. When he's in those rooms with those millionaires and billionaires, and he's schmoozing and talking to them, and he's telling the bankers, hey, don't worry about it. I just said that stuff for Warren. that gets across very clearly what they're going to do when they get into office. And that's basically just go back to status quo. Same status quo that ended up with Trump. Here's the thing. Sirota responded to this guy. The entire theory of, quote, first our politicians need to win, then our politicians will suddenly decide to challenge the power of the corporate donors is absolutely fantastical West Wing level bullshit that never happens. Why would it happen? If your vote is a captured item, if it's blue no matter who, if it's no, if there is blue no matter who, least worse, if there is no consequence, if there's no accountability associated with the political system, meaning your vote is given not for anything assertive and active in regards to what the politician is going to do, but entirely because of who that guy is not. Meaning the idea that you're going to give a pivot when every incentive in the world is to say thank you and to move on because any political leverage that you had at that point is out the window. Your leverage in this is your capacity to make them lose, especially from the position to which you occupy now. The moment that Sanders lost that race, your strongest position to take would have been, you represent our interests, you get our vote, and explicitly make a demand. We want Medicare for all. This is a pandemic. It's unacceptable that we even have to make the argument for Medicare for all. And if you are not willing to acquiesce to this policy, there are 30 million of us that are willing to make you lose. And within the context of that, there will be you accepting a loss to a man that you considered a maniac, the end of all things, in order to just not acquiesce to a policy that would have organically brought the party together to beat Trump. Sirota is right. Policy is nonsense. It doesn't happen in that way of, okay, I'm going to gift you with something. Nonsense. Your power is leverage. Leverage is what you have at this point. Leverage is what you have at this disposal. The goal of this is not necessarily to get Trump elected. The goal of this is to hold your political leader accountable and to understand that politics is your politician trying to get your vote, not you throwing your body at the politician. There's a difference in those things. There's a difference in those things. Sirota, today, however, warrior, fighting a good fight, taking punches, throwing punches. A man fails. A man falls. Sirota, I'll be voting to defeat Trump, but as a historical matter, I don't think we should ever forget that the Democratic presidential primary featured a billionaire, a McKinsey consultant campaigning in a wine cave, and a candidate promising donors that nothing will fundamentally change. And one more thing, Sirota, we shouldn't forget. You will be voting for the party that had all of those things. No weaselly words. I'll be voting to defeat Trump. Nope. You will be voting for Joe Biden. Let's be very clear. When you place that vote, the conceptual space of it mellows out to a certain degree and it becomes a material thing. I don't know when that process takes place. It's like a baby. But at some point, when it becomes a material thing and that material thing makes a choice, the other stuff goes away. And the only thing that's there is the vote for Biden. You can't put anything that says not Trump. That's not on the ballot. What's on the ballot is Trump, Biden, and other members of either the Green Party or Libertarian Party or some other party. No weaselly words. Accept it if you're going to do it. Take your shower, fair enough. But own the fact that you will be voting for Joe Biden in an election that had a wine cave, a billionaire, and a McKinsey consultant. I'm making the point that if even you, as feisty as you've been, are going to vote for Joe Biden, and I can point out other people, Cornel West, for example, people who are supposed to be radicals, if even you can be broken back just Bane and Batman broken in this way, where you will drag your body, your husk of a body, to the polls, and you will pull the lever for one Joe Biden in order to stop a man who I would imagine you consider to be the end of all things also. Otherwise, I don't think you would go and make this particular vote and make this particular statement telling people where that vote is going to go. No, I don't accept this is to defeat Trump. I accept this as a vote for Joe Biden because that's literally what it is. I don't think poorly of anybody that makes this choice at all. I understand why people would look at this thing and be freaked out by Trump and say, oh my God, this is too much. I get it. They have to run to the safety spot. They need to go to we need somebody like just somebody who's a manager of sorts. And to keep this system back to where this system was. I do get it. And I don't think for a minute that he wants to make this vote. But he is being bent into form. And the catch becomes, why is he being bent into form? If David Sirota had 30 million people with David Sirota saying, you represent our interests and you get a vote, meaning you don't get anything from us from the standpoint of us 30 million people, and you would lose this race if you don't back our interests. That's a demand, a clear demand. Power concedes nothing without a demand. And if in 2020 that demand was made, I'll guarantee you Sirota would have been out there with you saying, you get our vote when you represent our interests. And right now that interest is Medicare for all because we're in the midst of a pandemic. And if indeed you say Trump is going to destroy the world, how do you justify not acquiescing to this policy and organically bringing energy to the party so we can ensure that maniac loses? He would have been right there with you. And that 30 million people, 40 million people, how many people that was, the party would have had to make a choice. Do we acquiesce or not? That is a far stronger position to be in as opposed to subservience. To once again, over the last 40 years, to give up and to give in. And yeah, this applies to the left because the left is the one that cares about things. We're the ones that care about those people being on the street. We're the ones that care about those people on those food lines or food court, those bread lines. We are the ones that care about the world in regards to the environment, where we don't want to see the environment destroyed, or we want the environment here for our great-great-grandkids or whatever. We're the ones that care about those things. And if we're the ones that care about those things, we have a larger, cosmic, philosophical responsibility to try to impress those things upon the planet. It has always been the left to drag the country forward in regards to progress. And I'm making the point that this was an inflection point in 2020 where the public itself had the power and had the wherewithal in regards to its understanding of what it wanted in regards to policy. For the first time in my lifetime, realizing that it was popular. I understand that Sanders didn't want to take the fight to Joe Biden in the sense of electability or meaning, or even in many respects, calling him on lies. He didn't want to have a rumble in the way that Obama wanted to have a rumble to actually win it. This notion of a political revolution didn't necessarily materially follow from the standpoint of logic. Because if you wanted to have a political revolution and you believe that you can't even hit a guy for lying, then that's not a political revolution. That is nothing. That's not even necessarily an election. That's something else. The only way to deal with the poverty in this country, to deal with the fact that people don't have health care in the midst of a pandemic to the tune of 30 or 40 million, to deal with the fact that all of these people are out of a job or that the climate is hitting the bricks. The only way to deal with those things in real terms is to not continuously acquiesce to the Democratic Party because they don't believe in those things. The only way is to fight tooth and nail for those policies in and of themselves, absent and separate from the Democratic Party establishment. That is your only pathway. Until you get to the point of being able to stand in solidarity with millions and say, you get our vote when you represent our interests, nothing in the system will fundamentally change. And Joe Biden and Donald Trump may be the greatest distillation of you have nowhere else to go that I think has been ever conceptually created on this planet. And you must realize that because this worked so well, even for people like Sirota and West and some of these other people who are radicals, it will be replicated. Again, whether it's with the Ted Cruz, whether it's with the Tom Cotton, you must understand the ruling elites of this country, the billionaire class, are perfectly okay with either of those choices. The only choice that they didn't want to deal with was Bernie Sanders. From the standpoint of a Joe Biden, Bloomberg was not going to get into the race because Bloomberg gets everything that Bloomberg wants with Joe Biden in that office, just like the other billionaires that these guys are schmoozing with. I am making the very basic point to you that this scam is going to continue, and the scam is only going to get worse as the right wing of that becomes more sophisticated in the way that they go about doing the shitty policies that Donald Trump came up with. Wait till you get Tom Cotton. Wait till you get Ted Cruz. Wait till you get some other monstrosity that comes behind them that the public is going to be searching for when it doesn't necessarily get the things that it needs. Now, even Sirota falls. This race didn't have to look like this. It honestly didn't. Imagine for the moment a world where Sanders comes out and says, I understand that I've given over my support to you guys, and you got it. However, I also understand why these 40 million people who demand Medicare for all are not backing the party at this moment. And if the party wants their support, the party needs to represent their interests. I mean, for God's sake, we're in the midst of a pandemic. Does the party really want to tank it to a man who they call the apocalypse instead of acquiescing to a policy that 88% of the members of the party supports while 70% of the public supports? I mean, for God's sake, it went for 20 different Democrats and it stayed there and only got more popular. We're in the midst of a pandemic and we have a country that needs an assertive policy for it. And this is what the country is screaming for. What happens when AOC, what happens when the Young Turks, what happens when the Sunrise Movement, what happens when all of these groups are saying the exact same thing? What happens when members inside the party who also wanted Medicare for all start saying, hey, maybe we'll lose this race if we don't back those policies. Maybe we need to back that policy for the best interest of America, right? We don't want to tank it to a man who we call the apocalypse. I mean, we, after all, do need the health care. Do you realize right now Joe Biden has backed away from the public option stuff that he was talking about? Meaning you're not even getting that. And I told you that immediately after it was mano a mano, all of those things that were said in the primary would go up in smoke and would be vanished. And nobody will remember any of those things because Trump is a maniac. Trump is going to end the world, and that's the person who you need to focus on. And that's been this race. America as an afterthought. And at the end of the day, even Iron Man, Indomitable, that has unfortunately been dominated in this moment. Even Sirota falls. Like, share, and subscribe.